Hello everybody, it's George from Ireland. So doing this video with this microphone for the very first time, partly to see does this improve sound quality or not. So thank you for tuning in. We're talking about the Israeli incursions into Gaza. Obviously, this is exacting vengeance for what happened 22 days ago, the 7th of October massacres in Israel, coming just 50 years in one day after the Yom Kippur War. When the Arab countries surprised Israel by attacking. So perhaps it's just not just about revenge. It's an attempt to annihilate Hamas because Israel's vowed that they're never going to suffer this again. And there have already been some ground attacks, but Israel's been quite circumspect about this, had to call up 300,000 reserves and get them ready, develop some sort of plan. And it's very tricky because, of course, Gaza's built a network of tunnels Hamas has built a network of tunnels under Gaza, estimated at least 100 miles long, maybe several hundred miles long. And remember, Gaza's only, 40 miles north to south and about 8 east to west at its narrowest point. So connecting various buildings to pop up all over the place. Now, Israel's got very advanced technology, but I'm told it's not always possible to detect all these tunnels, and they can be dug and they can be built. Now, obviously, Hamas is actually quite vulnerable in the tunnels because if you set off an explosion there, that really magnifies the blast. I'm on mute. Okay, so let's do this thing. Thank you, Colin Kenny. Colin Kenny, can you hear me now? Thank you for tuning in. I was saying if there's an explosion in a tunnel, that really magnifies the blast. And people could be cut off from air in the tunnel. Though they could just be buried alive, just be trapped in there. But anyway, the purpose of the tunnels is obviously invisibility and protection from bombardment overhead, just so long as some incendiary device doesn't actually get into the tunnel. Presumably that's where the hostages are secreted. The two have been set at liberty. They say that that's where they were held when they were abducted. So Colin Kenny, please let me know whether I'm audible now. But Israel, perhaps surprisingly, has turned on electricity for Gaza again and allowed them internet and telephone connectivity. So why are they allowing telecommunications up again? Presumably they think that some of the Hamas militants might be foolish enough to actually communicate by phone. The unwisdom of that is because, obviously, Israel is listening in, and indeed, obviously, can geolocate them with their mobile phones. And that's how they can be assassinated. And that's why Hamas appears to be very careful for months before this, that in planning the execution of this operation against Israel, they did not communicate by such devices. So, Colin Kenny, can you hear me or not? I better write something in the chat. Can you? Yes, you can hear me now. Okay, good. So, is the sound quality better on account of using this thing or not? Anyway, so it's only just beginning. Now, Israel's plan doesn't seem to be to control Gaza permanently, but this is a prolonged raid to try and wipe out Hamas. Now, they just can't eliminate every single fighter, no matter how many civilians they're willing to kill. They can destroy most of their equipment. They didn't have very much sophisticated equipment. As their rockets, it seems like they fired them all in the first salvos right at the beginning of this conflict. So they got small arms. So some of these irregular forces, some would call them guerrillas. I know many people call Hamas a terrorist organization. Is that it's just so low tech. There's not that much to destroy. So what else about them? And then drive them out. So it's going to last at least several weeks. Cast your mind back to January, February 2009. Similar attacks by Israel into Gaza, and that left a couple of thousand Palestinian civilians killed. Hamas is saying almost 8,000 civilians killed. They may well be inflating the figure in order to generate sympathy for the world and to lead to execration against Israel. And obviously, there's already a chorus of condemnation from really the whole of the Islamic world and a lot of the global South, and growing disquiet amongst the Western world. You look at the Labour Party in the United Kingdom calling for an immediate ceasefire. In the Republic of Ireland, the Irish government, our president has expressed his a deep unease at the situation. So many Palestinian civilians who are being killed. So I know it's difficult, well, impossible to fight a modern military campaign without killing a few civilians, but obviously militaries are obliged to try and keep the death toll as low as possible, which is incredibly difficult when the population lives so densely concentrated, and there's such a labyrinth of streets and tunnels in a place like Gaza. And obviously it would allay some of the humanitarian concerns that electricity's back on, as in hospitals and so on can function. and people can move around a little bit more. Fridges can function, things like that. And there was perhaps no special military rationale in keeping it on. But then, people might get used to that, could turn it off at any time. Yeah. So Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, he's insisting that he really is moral. But one thing is that they've not had any success in the Israelis, is they haven't managed to rescue a single hostage. 229 still in Gaza, still in Hamas's control. I think it was 2 were released because they're dual American citizens, and the Russians had not managed to convince Hamas to release any of their citizens. Bearing in mind that the Russian government, they invited Hamas delegates to Moscow a few days ago for peace talks, and Turkey is deeply troubled by this. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, he's denounced some of the Israeli actions, but of course Israel doesn't care about this. They are furious. They've been filled with a terrible resolve. So this is not going to stop for a long time. Now, I hate to be the cynic, but he's actually stopped all the protests against Netanyahu. Apparently, he was tipped off by Egyptian intelligence this was going to happen, and the Israeli press has said that. And then he didn't do anything. He let it go ahead. Because cui bono, who benefits? Well, Hamas will benefit because obviously they're anti-Semitic. They murdered like 1,200 Jewish civilians and about 200 Israeli soldiers, and they've got Israel to invade them into this bear trap. Going to be heavy casualties for them, and lead to growing condemnation from all around the world against the state of Israel. But on the other hand, it's actually taken the heat off Netanyahu domestically. And people say, we can't change horses midstream. We can't force him as prime minister right now. We've got to finish this. It's going to take weeks or months. And only then can he be pushed out. But could he so burnish his credentials as Israel's doughtiest warrior, who will stop at nothing to achieve security, that actually some people, well, we come around to this guy, maybe he's not so bad for all bad after all. We have to sink our differences. Our disagreements with him, they are petty in comparison to the existential threat of Hamas. So it might actually win him more in office. Would he hold a khaki election if this is seen as a victory? So I think we haven't seen anything yet. I'm sorry to say, I think it's going to be going on till after Christmas. Obviously, not a festival that either Jews or Muslims celebrate. So there are obviously constant bombardments. Now, but Iran has done nothing. Okay, I think they've been warned off by the United States by the presence of U.S. aircraft carriers in the region. They're already suffering high inflation. At the beginning of this year, the UK Foreign Office, in a private memorandum, estimated a 50% chance of revolution in Iran this year. Now, that's diminished a lot, down to as low as 10% by now, but they don't want to risk it. So that's why I think the Iranians are not getting involved. Their forces, the Houthi-backed forces, are already taking a pacing in Yemen. They're quite stretched with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in Syria. That war still isn't over. And Hezbollah in Lebanon. The United States has launched airstrikes against Iranian-backed militants in Syria. So that's why Iran is not getting involved. Because if Iran attacked with Hezbollah and so on, or Syria, or even the West Bank Palestinians, then Israel would have a really serious headache. They can deal with one at a time. They don't have to fight a two-front war. Right, thank you so much for watching my channel. Goodbye, everyone.